Titans, did you wake up this morning, look at your crypto profile, noticing that Bitcoin is still crashing, and then grab some Kahlua instead of your coffee afterwards? If that sounds like you and you're panicking right now, then this video is for you. Kevart, hit that intro. Let's kick it off with the Crypto Fear and Greed Index. Yesterday, we were at 77, which represents extreme greed. But now we're at 79 despite the current correction. I'm pretty sure this is going to change significantly by tomorrow, so let's give this a pass for today. Now let's move on to your daily reminder that the Bitcoin halving is in just 33 days. Also note that the halving date is now currently estimated to be April 22nd, but again, it's a moving date based on whenever the 210,000 blocks have been added to the Bitcoin blockchain. Moving on to the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. Looking at the 24-hour window, there really isn't much liquidity evident above or below the current price action here. This is likely because the market is still waiting for some settling first, since we're still actively in a correction. Now let's take a quick look at the Bitcoin ETF flow table. Yesterday, March 18th, we had our second day in March of negative money flow for the ETFs, which had an outflow of $154.3 million. The first occurrence of this was on March 1st, which had an outflow of $139.6 million. If you're looking at this and panicking because of the negative money flow, then look closely again. This was simply a case of the sell pressure being greater from Grayscale at $642.5 million over the buy pressure from the other ETFs, especially against BlackRock. But BlackRock still bought $451.5 million worth of Bitcoin yesterday. So what does this tell you? It tells you that the institutions are still buying. In fact, they are buying this Bitcoin correction, so keep that in mind. Guys, this is your reminder that we are only 65 days away from a decision to be made by the SEC for the first Ethereum spot ETF by May 23rd. Don't sleep on Ethereum because you know what happened to Bitcoin leading up to the approval of the spot ETFs back in January. All right, now let's hit the charts. As you are well aware, right now, Bitcoin is having another red day. But before we look at the current correction for Bitcoin, let's do a review of the four major corrections we've had so far in this current cycle on the weekly time frame. So as you can see, the first correction was about 23%. The second one was about 20%. The third one was about 22%. And the fourth one was about 21.5%. Now looking at the daily chart for Bitcoin, we can see that we are currently retesting the 62.5K to 63.8K support zone that we've been discussing over the last few days. So far, this correction that started last Thursday has brought us down about 15.5%. But as you just saw, the typical corrections in this cycle have ranged anywhere from about 20 to 23%. So do not be surprised if we retest this wick at about 59K, which would represent about a 20% correction. So the question that everyone has right now is whether or not this is all normal for a cycle, given that it looked like we were about to moon our way to about 100K, only to find ourselves in a state of rejection against the previous all-time high. To answer this question, let's review the previous three cycles. Here's cycle one on a daily time frame of the BLX chart. Notice how when retesting the previous all-time high of about $32, we had three rejections in these two red circles, and then we finally broke through on the fourth attempt in this green circle. During this time, the worst correction we saw was about 13%. Looking at cycle two now, there were three rejections in these red circles, just like in the previous cycle, and then we finally broke through the previous all-time high of about $1,170 on the fourth attempt in this green circle. During this time, we had two major corrections of about 36% and 32.5%. Looking at cycle three now, there were two corrections in this red circle, and then we finally broke through the previous all-time high of about 20K on the third attempt in this green circle. During this time, the worst correction we saw was about 17%. Okay, now we're back to the current price action on the daily chart. So let's summarize. We now have a better understanding that what we are seeing here is really no different than what we saw in the previous three cycles. It's normal to get multiple rejections and fake outs when retesting the previous all-time highs, and the corrections can vary, but again, we also know that this cycle has had pretty consistent corrections around 20%. So stay calm if we drop even further down from here to about 59K. But to leave things on a more positive note, notice how the daily stochastic RSI is bombed out here, which indicates that we are in an oversold state. That's a good sign that we are not that far away from seeing at least a short-term recovery soon.
Titans, we are your one-stop source for guiding you through this Bitcoin bull run. Please join us as we continue to provide the latest market and technical analysis that are going to give you that edge.